Let's start the hour with MS Now Washington reporter and co-host of The Weekend, Jackie Alemany at the White House. MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde is here with me, and two senior fellows at the Council of Foreign Relations are joining us, foreign policy columnist Stephen Cook and Washington Post columnist Max Boot. Jackie, you spoke with the president just this morning. What did you learn?
Yeah, Anna, essentially what we got from President Trump was a status on the second round of negotiations that were postponed earlier this week. His answer to that question, essentially TBD, about when J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner will return to Islamabad to continue to try to hash out a longer-term deal. He told me, and I'll read the quote, that Iran has no idea who their leader is at this moment. He said they're all messed up. You know, we took out really 3 levels of leaders and everybody that was even close behind him, so they have a hard time figuring out who the hell can speak for their country. They just don't know. Now, I'm going to save the fact check for our colleague David Rohde, who quickly spoke with a bunch of experts about Trump's claims, who have essentially said that they're incorrect. And I think some important context here that, might help illuminate why the sudden posture change and different tone change that we're hearing from the White House about extending patience to Iran, issuing an indefinite ceasefire, and basically allowing them to take their time and coming back to the negotiating table is the intense political pressure that he is under right now. He has new polling out this morning that shows that his approval ratings are at an all-time low. You have energy experts around the world saying that the world is really now facing the greatest security threat in modern history with regards to the lack of oil that is coming through the Strait of Hormuz. But meanwhile, the U.S. has said that they're going to continue this blockade. The Iranians have said that they would be more likely to return to the negotiating table if that blockade is ended by the U.S. military. So a lot of moving parts here, everything changing really hour by hour.
Jackie Alemany, keep us posted. Thank you for that reporting. David, what are your sources telling you about the comments we heard from the president this morning and those really interesting videos we're seeing both sides release?
I just want to thank Jackie for getting that interview. She's done an incredible job of reporting at the White House. In terms of those videos, again, the president talks about the Iranian Navy's been decimated. Every boat has been sunk. Well, there are members of the Iranian Navy, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, seizing a tanker. You can see it yourself on their videos, and they seized 3 tankers yesterday. They have a Navy. They have closed the Strait of Hormuz, period. So the president's claim there is false. And then the president's claim that the problem is the Iranians and they don't know who their leader is and they're all divided. That is also false. I mean, I've talked to multiple experts, and there's an amazing story in the New York Times. Farnaz Fasihi wrote it for them. She spoke to 23 people inside Iran. And so what has happened is the supreme leader was killed. His son has been named as the new leader. But essentially a group of Iranian Revolutionary Guard generals have taken over. They are in firm control of the country. They were already in power. It's not a new regime. And in a way, it's more hardline. But these generals are controlling Iran. They are deciding who negotiates where. So it's not a new government. It's not a divided government. And if anything, it's more hardline. And that's what I've heard from experts and what the New York Times is reporting as well.
And Stephen, it seems like the U.S. is still trying to figure out the best way to deal with Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. Just this morning, President Trump reiterated his threat that the U.S. will strike these small, fast attack boats Iran is using to seize much larger cargo ships and possibly lay more underwater mines. The president has previously said that he did not consider them much of a threat. Did the U.S. underestimate Iran's ability to use what look like recreational speedboats to cripple the strait?
Yeah, this is a tactic that the Iranians have used before. So I think the president's threats this morning are part of a pattern. The pattern where the president threatens escalation, expecting the Iranians to moderate their behavior or to stand down. And the Iranians take him up on the escalation, and then he's confronted with whether he has to escalate or look for some other solution to the problem. I think what's interesting about this episode, particularly with the extension of the ceasefire that the president announced yesterday, is that it's clear that the Iranians have figured him out. They have called his bluff. He does not want to escalate. And now they are playing this game where They say, we will go to the negotiating table, but you have to lift the blockade. That would be a tremendous humiliation and setback for the president if he were forced to do that.
Max, you have a plan for how to move negotiations ahead, and it starts with the U.S. paring down the agenda. Walk us through it.
Well, my thought is that, it's possible that Trump could actually achieve something with his blockade if he doesn't get too ambitious. He's not going to convince the Iranians to suddenly surrender and give in to all his demands. They made pretty clear that's not going to happen. But I think there is the possibility of using the U.S. blockade of Iranian shipping as a bargaining chip to force the Iranians to lift their blockade of all non-Iranian shipping. So essentially what I think we should do now is offer an open deal to the Iranians where we lift our blockade and they lift their blockade. And that essentially removes the gun from the head of the global economy and also from the head of the Iranian economy, because both are in serious jeopardy as long as the blockades continue, and buy some time to have lengthy negotiations on the nuclear issue, which are not going to be resolved overnight. I think that's the only way forward, because otherwise, if both blockades stay in place, it's basically a ticking time bomb, and the damage to the global economy will worsen. We're likely to be thrust into a recession. The damage to the Iranian economy will worsen as well. But again, I very much doubt that this cabal of generals, who, as David noted, are now in charge of Iran, I very much doubt that they will surrender on what they see as their red lines.
And David, on the economic pressure, it looks like it's a test of wills in many ways. On one hand, the president is risking costing his party the midterms at this point because of the cost of gas prices. On the other hand, Iran is really putting so much trade at risk here, $500 million a day in lost trade because of the blockade the U.S. has inflicted them with. Which side can endure more pain longer?
So Sudeep Reddy, MS Now's Washington bureau chief, asked me and Julia Jester, who covers the State Department, to ask experts. And the vast majority said Iran clearly can endure more economic pain. It's a terrible situation. This is a terrible government. It's, shot and killed protesters. But because Iran isn't a democracy, they're not really accountable to the population. And beyond that, they have been under some kind of sanctions since like the 1980s. So it will hurt them. They're going to be short on cash. They can't sell oil, but they grow their own food. They've learned how to limit, the kind of imports they need. Whereas oil experts are saying if this continues through the end of April, some of the gas shortages, not just high prices, but a shortage of fuels that we see in Asia and other parts of the world, could start hitting the U.S. next month.
And so, Stephen, Jackie told us, there are these logistical and communication challenges that the president discussed with her that he's dealing with and why it's halted negotiations moving forward. I want to play just a portion of what he's been saying about finding an end to the war. Let's listen.
The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. Let's see what happens. Maybe they make a deal, maybe they don't. From the standpoint of America, we win. I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. We can do whatever we want. And it should be ending pretty soon.
That sense of urgency, what are all the posts the president's been putting out signal to Iran? And does it help the U.S. negotiating position?
Well, I'm not sure it's a sense of urgency. I get the sense of desperation of a president who backed himself into a conflict that he thought would be over in a number of days. And I think the Iranians have a pretty good read on the president and are not taking him up on any of the bluster. They are responding in kind. So I think it would suggest that negotiations, if they happen, it will be long and extremely difficult. But they know these are the hardest of the hardliners in Iran. They are willing to allow the Iranians to eat dirt before capitulating to the United States. That's not likely to be the case if and when there are gas shortages in the United States or people's summer travel seasons are disrupted because there's lack of jet fuel. I think the president knows this, and he's looking for different ways by threatening escalation, and that's his only card, and the Iranians have just not been willing to play.
And Max, both CBS and NBC News are now reporting that Iran's missile capabilities have not been destroyed as significantly as the president and the Pentagon have been saying. How concerning is this? How has Iran been able to be so resilient militarily?
I think this is another example of a nation that's pretty successfully waging asymmetric warfare against the United States, even though we're much more powerful. We've seen, another version of this in previous decades in Iraq and Afghanistan, where, I think the Bush administration and Don Rumsfeld and others were saying, like, how can we possibly not be winning in Iraq because we're so much more powerful than the insurgents? Well, the insurgents in Iraq figured out how to hit America's weak points with IEDs and guerrilla attacks, and the Iranians have figured out how to hit our weak points and really the weak points of the entire Persian Gulf energy infrastructure, which they've targeted so successfully with missiles and drones. And despite all of the strikes that Pete Hegseth keeps bragging about that we've launched against Iran and the 15,000 targets that we've hit, et cetera, at the end of the day, U.S. intelligence admits that Iran still has significant military capabilities, including perhaps half of their missiles, half of their drones, perhaps half of their speedboats. And it doesn't take much to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It just takes the threat of an attack on a single tanker or cargo ship to paralyze 20% of the world's global energy flows. And that's the weapon of mass economic destruction that the Iranians are now wielding so successfully. And Trump really has not figured out a counter to that.